Hello Finxters and welcome to a new Pandas tutorial. Today we are having a look at how to read and write HTML with Pandas. So in this tutorial we are learning how to read in HTML tables directly from websites, how to turn these tables into Pandas data frames, and we will see how to transform Pandas data frames into HTML tables. So let's get started. We are using the Wikipedia page of Europe for this approach. It's a page about the continent. It contains several information about the history and current situation. It's very interesting. I recommend reading it. And we need the URL, so I copy that. And yeah, let's get started. First, we are importing Pandas because that's the library that we need. Then we create a variable URL. Inside, we put in as a string the URL of the Wikipedia page. And then we create a variable tables, and we assign it the read HTML function. It looks like this: pd.read HTML. And inside here we put in the URL. And finally, we will output the type of tables because we want to know what it is. And as you can see, the type of tables is a list. So what this function basically does, it reads in all the tables it can find on this page and saves them inside a list. So let's see how many tables there are in total. We use the len function for this. Inside we pass in tables. And as you can see, there are 44 tables in total, which is quite a lot. And if we want to get a specific table, we could, for example, do this. Since tables is a list, we can assign a specific table by saying in square brackets the number of the table. So if we put in 4, we get in the 5th table of the Wikipedia page. And it looks like this. This is the 5th table of the Wikipedia page. But as you can see, this method of getting a specific table is not really efficient because we don't know which table that is. And yeah, that's not really useful to use. So, but luckily, Pandas, or this read HTML function, provides us with some great parameters so that we can specify which table we want to have. So let's say we want to get this table here with the GDP and several countries and so on. Then we could use the match parameter, and we do it like this. We say economy table, because it contains some economic information. This is a new variable, and we set it equal to pd.read HTML, like before. Again, we pass in the URL, but also we apply the match parameter. And here we say, we put in a string or regular expression to specify which table we want to have. And for example, this one contains peak year as a string inside the table, so we specify that we want to have this specific table. And if we output that table, you can see that there are 2 tables actually, because this list, as you can see, there's a comma and it contains 2 tables. And that's because there are 2 tables on this page that contain the string peak year. Because as you can see, here are these 2 tables directly next to each other, and both contain the string peak year. So we need to be a bit more specific with that. And so let's say we put in the string nominal peak year, because that's a string that is not in the other one. And let's try that. Let's first of all state that economy table indeed has 2 entries. As you can see, that is the case. So now we are a bit more specific with our match parameter. we say economy table dot equals pd dot read HTML, like before. Again, we pass in the URL, and this time we are a bit more specific here. We say nominal peak year, and we output that table. And now it should only have one table as inside the list. Again, we can confirm this by doing this. And as you can see, there is indeed only one table inside this economy table variable. This read HTML function provides us with a lot more parameters actually. We will have a look at a few more. We could, for example, convert some data types to other data types. For example, as you can see, this US dollar column, these are integer values. We could transform them to float values. And we could, for example, use the rank column as the index, because as you can see, there's an extra index basically, and we want to get rid of that. And this is how we do it. Again, economy table equals pd.read HTML. Again, we pass in the URL. Again, we use the match parameter with nominal peak year. And we use the converters parameter to say which columns we want to, or which columns data types we want to transform. And this one expects a dictionary. And as the dictionary's key, we pass in the name of the column, which is this very long name here, GDP, nominal peak year, and so on. We pass it in here. And as the value, we say the data type that we want to have. So that's float. And we also apply the index column parameter to say that which column we want to have as the index. And it's the first one, so we apply a 0 here. And we output that. You see that the values of this column actually transform to float values, and that the rank column is now the index column. And now we will learn how to transform these tables into Pandas data frames, because as we've already seen before, this is a list, and we want to have it as a Pandas data frame. And this approach is actually pretty simple. We create a new variable, economy df, for example, and we say that from the economy table we want to have the first entry, and it only contains one entry. And if we output that, you see that this is now a Pandas data frame, or at least it looks like that, but we can actually confirm that this is a Pandas data frame by doing this is instance economy df and pd.dataframe. And this says true, so indeed this is a Pandas data frame now, and now we can do all sorts of data analyzing stuff with that, because that's ultimately why we transform these tables into Pandas data frames. We could also, for example, check that the column's data type of the US dollar column changed to float. We can do it like this, economy df dot d types. That means data types. And as you can see, this US dollar column indeed changed to float 64. Yeah, next we will see how to write data frames to HTML tables using the toHTML function. And therefore we are using a new data set, which I have provided here. It contains a speed column, height column, and length column. And we create a pandas data frame and apply a dog, cat, and fish index. And this is, if we output that, a pretty usual pandas data frame with some columns, some rows, and some values inside them. And yeah, the approach to turn this into a HTML table is actually pretty simple. We create a new variable, HTML table, and we say df, because we call this data frame df, dot to HTML. And to output this, we use a print statement. And as you can see, this is now a HTML table. If you have done some basic web development, you are familiar with this. It's a very basic table structure of HTML table. And the print statement here is necessary because if we just output it like this, you see that the output is pretty messy and not really, you don't get a good overview of that, so we use the print statement here. It's just necessary with HTML tables. So yeah, we can also write this HTML table to a file. We do it like this, HTML file, it's a new variable, equals open, and then we say the name of this index of this HTML file, index.html. Let's call it like this. We say W for write, and we say HTML file dot write HTML table, and we say HTML file dot close again. And this does not produce an output, but as you can see, there's a new file, index.html, and if we open that using a web browser, you see that we now have this HTML table as a real HTML file. However, the approach we used here is a bit wordy, and it's not necessary to do it like this, and there's a much cleaner way of doing this using the with statement. We do it like this. This approach is a bit more clean, and it's not so wordy, and you should probably get used to this approach using the with statement, because it's used in exception handling, and it's much cleaner. It produces the same thing as above, but it's just a cleaner way of doing this. So next we will see how to style the HTML tables, because the toHTML function provides us with some nice ways and clean ways of styling the HTML table using pandas, which is very nice. So we say HTML table, again df dot to HTML, and we could, for example, use the justify parameter to justify the column labels, and it's just justify, and then we say, for example, center, because the default value is right, but we want to have center. And again, we print this HTML table. And as you can see, there's now in this tr tag, it now says center, whereas before it said right, because right was the default value. We could also, for example, change the border size. The default value for border size is 1, but we could apply the borders parameter or border parameter, apply for example 4 to it, and the output now says that by equaling that to 4, we have now a border size of 4, which is a bit bigger. We could also, if we use CSS ID selectors, use the table ID parameter to say to which ID this HTML table belongs. So we say table ID, I don't know, let's call it animal table. And if we print that, you see that above here there's now this ID tag. And if we use CSS ID selectors, then this would belong now to the animal table ID. Yeah, so that was the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And I'm very happy to see you in the next one. Bye bye.